Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with one co-host this week.
I'm Joe Lalo.
And Jeff is having some internet trouble, so he couldn't make it tonight. But we have a guest who's I don't know if he's going to fill in for Jeff, but he promised to be just as entertaining as Jeff. This is Andy Peloquin, and he's a freelance writer and the author of the Queen of Thieves and also the newly relaunched Hero of Darkness series. He writes kind of dark and epic fantasy, and he also has a show called the Fantasy Fiends podcast. We're mostly going to be asking him about his relaunch today because he took a series that was not doing too much and renamed it and recovered it and all that good stuff, and it's selling quite well now. So, Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I never agreed to replace Jeff's magnetic personality, but I'll do my best.
All right. Yeah, you didn't actually sign on for that. We just thrust the role onto you because, unlike him, you showed up.
Yeah, exactly. I love that sort of improvisational stuff. I may not be good at it, but I enjoy it.
All right. Well, why don't you tell us a little more about your books and how you got into writing and publishing?
Right. So I actually started writing in 2014. I self-published a first novel. Didn't really do anything, but I learned a lot about the craft of writing, editing, all of that. And so I used that to actually write Blade of the Destroyer, which was the original version of Darkblade Assassin, the first book in the Hero of Darkness series. So I published the first 3 books in that series. And then I got a publishing deal for the Queen of Thieves series, so I was focusing more on that. And as I was writing the Queen of Thieves series, I was investigating a lot of the marketing stuff, listening to this podcast, obviously, sort of learning everything that went into the business of marketing and advertising and promoting and publishing and all of that. And as I was doing that, I realized that my books could be doing so much better because, like, on Goodreads there's 300 plus ratings. Amazon had 150 reviews, give or take. It had a 4.4 star rating. Like, it was positive feedback, but because of the cover, because of the blurb, because of the publisher, it wasn't really getting traction. And I couldn't sink a bunch of money into it because I would only get, the 35% royalties. So it just wasn't worth it. So when, after, learning a lot, reading every book on advertising and marketing that I could get my hands on, I figured, okay, I think I can do this. So I contacted the publisher and said, okay, because of the direction your publishing house is going, because of the direction the market's going, I really don't want to sort of waste either of our time launching another book that it's been a year and a half since the previous book came out in the series. It wasn't worth it. So they were like, yeah, totally cool. We love you. Thank you for 2 great years of publishing. Here's your rights back. And it was a huge gamble because the books were unpublished for 6 months. And for an author who had almost no following or a very small following and very few sales, having even half of your books unpublished, terrifying. I'm sure you guys can remember back when you were first starting out thinking, okay, I've got 1 book, 2 books, let's make these work. And so taking away half of what I had was scary, but it was a gamble that I was pretty sure needed to be made because the covers weren't working, the blurbs weren't working, nothing was working. And the fact that I didn't have control over them in Amazon, I wasn't able to run AMS ads, which is one of the huge methods for success in advertising today. So by taking it back, slapping new covers on it, giving those blurbs a polish, doing it again like this, and then the rapid release has helped to make it sort of get it way beyond actually what I was expecting from the series.
Yeah, that's really cool, and that's a great excuse to do a relaunch if you're kind of getting the rights back on a series. Was this just a kind of a small ebook only publisher, or did you have it with a bigger house?
Yeah, it was a small independent publisher. They focused mostly on horror, and because mine was dark fantasy, it's horror adjacent. So I went with them because they were really good at producing the books. They had a great editorial team. They helped me to learn a lot when I was just starting out. And so I'm very thankful for the years that I had with them, and we parted on good terms. I'm very happy about that because just we were going in the different directions, and so but I'm grateful for the everything that I learned from them about putting together a beautiful product. I just had to take it to the next level.
All right, cool. We're going to ask you a little bit more about the relaunch. I did want to ask, because I saw too that you're a freelance writer, and I think a lot of authors that maybe they're making some money from their books, but they'd like to become a full-time independent work from home kind of person, and doing something supplementary make sense for a lot of people. How did you get into that, and has it been everything you wanted it to be in that capacity?
I actually started the freelance writing business about 7 years ago. And I moved from one city to another, and I had no job, no prospects, nothing, and I had a family to take care of. So I started looking online, and I would sign up for a bunch of newsletters and information and stuff like that, just sort of learn the business of online. This was back in 2010, before everything was huge. And I got this email that says, we produce articles for your website. And I looked at the email. I kind of clicked on it by accident, and I looked at them, and they said, they work with a bunch of writers who produce great content. So I thought, okay, I'll reach out to them, see if they're interested. And it was one of those sort of content mills where websites pay 1 cent a word or something for articles, sort of generic articles, but that was how people were making a ton of money back in the early days of online businesses. And so working with them, I started out earning 1 cent a word, and I would make $500 a month. And then the next month I started working harder, and I made 1,000 or 2,000. And then I started getting better paid clients and more clients, and slowly building to the point where I could stop doing um, the other job that I was doing, teaching English, and focus entirely on that. And that was right when I moved cities again with my family. So it was nice to be able to make that transition. And that actually really helped me to sort of have the foundation of the professional work ethic that translated to being a writer. Because doing these articles, I'm used to getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to start work by 7 every day. And getting that stuff out of the way means I can focus on the writing, the book stuff later in the afternoon or for the rest of the day.
Yeah, it sounds like the sort of skills you develop as a freelancer, like definitely would be very good for building a work ethic. I mean, we don't. Lots of writers will have a writing, like they'll have a word count quota, but when you're a freelancer, there's a literal amount associated with that. Like this is how much those words are worth, and I got to imagine that that's a better, a highly effective way to motivate you to write those words in a given day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good and it's bad to have that job because you get used to sitting down for 6 hours a day and putting in the work. So now that I'm getting to write stories, a 6 hour workday is awesome. I'm so happy I can put 15,000 words down in those 6 hours, and I just had a great day compared to doing 6 hours of writing articles on weightlifting or car tires or whatever it was. But at the same time, it's like it's this job that no one really understands, that you just kind of have to sit there and focus, and it's no fun at all.
No, yeah, I can only imagine. Like, would you say, like, do you end up developing, like, I got to imagine it helps you develop research skills too. Like, that's something that a lot of people can sometimes burn a tremendous amount of time doing research. And if you've got a value associated with every word in an article, then you can develop efficiency in that regard too.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I learned was preparation. Like, I still do some articles because the success of Hero of Darkness is so new. It's like I haven't said, okay, I'm making the full-time transition. So I still keep up with a few of these articles, the better paid ones, because it frees me up to, financially to focus on the stuff. So I will prepare my articles. I'll do all the research the night before, and I'll have all of the links ready. So when I sit down to write in the morning, it's just writing, and I can get through an article in maybe a third of the time that other authors will, or other freelance writers will, because of all the research. And the same goes for blog posts, and then now outlining novels. I'll outline the novel, the broad strokes, so that when I sit down to write, all I have to do is just keep writing.
All right, sounds good. And this is one of Jeff's questions. We're going to be asking Jeff's questions, even though he's not here. What would you say are the qualifications for being able to do freelance work? And do you think that anyone could do it?
It's definitely something anyone could do. It does take a certain type of personality to sit down and force yourself to work. Today or yesterday was Canada Day. Well, yesterday being July 2nd. I don't know when this is airing, but July 2nd here in Canada is Canada Day. And everyone else was sleeping in and I was working because it's just something that I needed to do. I needed to, get the day job done so I could focus on writing in the afternoon. So you need to have that sort of very organized and almost anal retentive personality in a way to say, I've had conversations with my wife where she's like, it's a day off. I don't have to get up, take the kids to school, sleep. And I'm like, no, I have, I want to write 6 chapters today, so I need to get up. And so it's one of those skills that you definitely need to have to be able to do it. And just like writing a book, you're not going to get the book written if you don't sit down and put in the time every day.
Yep, Canada Day sounds like an excellent writing day, and we're going to air this right now, tonight, July 3rd, whatever it is. We've got the Independence Day tomorrow, so we had to slip it in there for folks.
Perfect, yeah.
But yeah, same thing with writing. I know I'm project-based, so I'll just work right through holidays and stuff, or at least work in the mornings, and if you're going to do something in the evening, like for 4th of July. And I don't know how your family likes that. I don't know, do you take off at all, like after you finish a book, but until then you're kind of just dedicated and want to always get stuff in?
Yeah, I'm very project oriented like you. So I'm working on a book right now. I started writing it last Friday, 10 days ago, and I'll be finishing it Thursday or Friday. And until I'm done, like that is the sole focus. And then as soon as it's done, take a couple of days off, breathe, relax, de-stress, all of that. But yeah, until I finish the book or until I finish what I need to do, I can't take a break. And that's actually one of the side effects, so to speak, of being a freelance writer is, okay, I need to make $200 today to feed my family. So I need to write this many words. As soon as I'm done with these, these thousands of words, I'm done because I've made the money that I need. And so that's sort of how I've made it work as a freelance writer. And then now as an author, just knowing how much I need to get done every day to reach my goals.
Right. And for those who can't see right now, I think Andy is actually working on his manuscript on another screen while he's talking to us, because we interrupted him before he got his project done.
Now, thankfully, I got it. 3 to 5 is my writing sweet spot because I have my podcast at 5:30, and often podcasts and interviews and things like this happen at 6. So I made sure I was there at 2:30 to finish by 4:30.
All right, excellent. And you mentioned your podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, it sounds like it's for the readers rather than a podcast geared towards the writers. Are you finding that it's, I don't know, helping word get out about your books, or has it just mostly been for fun so far?
Yeah, the Fantasy Fiends podcast has been a ton of fun. It's been a great platform to use to network with other authors and find new readers. Basically, I was having so much fun in my Facebook, my personal author Facebook group, doing live reenactments of scenes from my books. I would I'll go live every week and read a scene, 1,000 words or something, with the voices and the accents and stuff. I love that. And so when my co-host Stevie Collier reached out and said, hey, let's do a podcast together, it was perfect because then I get to do it every week on the air with some author's new book. We did it with Lindsay's book. Quite an awesome book, I remember. It was a lot of fun to read. Very snarky character. Love that. And so, yeah, we're definitely much more reader focused. We talk about the deeper themes behind fantasy novels. A lot of people see fantasy as sort of popcorn fiction, where it's just a light read. But if you delve into fantasy novels, some of them are as philosophical or intellectual as literary fiction. So we love talking about the themes that drive fantasy. We get into all the taboo things: sexuality, gender, religion, politics, race, and all that, of course, through the context of a fantasy novel. But it's a really fun way to delve into the genre.
Yeah, that's a thing that I think a lot of people sort of overlook. Like, sci-fi and fantasy, like, oh, well, they can't deal with real issues. No, they can deal with real issues in a metaphorical way, which sort of sneaks the education into your brain. Like, essential truth can be wrapped up in any wrapper. But so one thing I want to ask you about your podcast is, are you treating your podcast sort of with the same dedication as the freelance work and the writing? Like, are you doing it consistently and dedicated to its release every week or however often it releases?
Yeah, it's every Thursday nights, 5:30 to 6:30 Pacific time, 7:30 to 8:30 Central time, and I'm the one who lines up all the guests. Our schedule is actually totally full for the rest of the year. I've reached out to authors, get that those things lined up, send the guest packets 10 days in advance, make sure that everything is on course, so that when it comes time, it's just fun and relaxing because that's more fun for the guests. Obviously, there have been a few guests who are like, "Oh, I don't know what to expect. This is my first podcast," and so we make sure that they have a lot of fun on the thing. But all of that preparation beforehand really helps to make it so much more relaxing on the day of.
Yeah, like it's amazing how often podcasts as an art form are super useful because they can be conversational, but on the other hand, there are people who aren't prepared for extemporaneous conversation. So being able to give them a packet beforehand, like here's what's coming, it's a great idea and really helps people to I don't know, be comfortable in a situation that might not be comfortable otherwise.
Definitely. And Stevie has a gift of gab. He rambles on, he goes off on tangents, and so we have a lot of fun sort of reining him in, the guest and I, trying to keep him in line. Stevie, we're talking about this topic today. I'm sure he's listening, so here's his shout out.
It's helpful to have somebody who can sort of fill some empty time while, for example, you're trying to type to the other person that it's their turn to talk.
All right. Well, last question for me about the podcast is just, do you guys use it at all to help sell your own books? And would you recommend that if somebody's thinking of starting one geared towards kind of their target audience, could it be a way to like maybe even guide people to audiobooks if they happen to be listeners rather than readers?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the whole podcasting scene could be a great part of the author platform. Stevie handles the business side of things, the advertising and stuff like that. We have built a following on YouTube. We do pitch our own novels. Hey, my book's just released. Go check it out. We run commercials to help cover the costs of the podcast, things like that. I don't know directly how, there's no way to quantify how many sales translate from each episode that we do, but I'd like to think that when people watch it and they see, okay, there's this book, he made that character sound really funny, maybe I'll go check out the book, and they'll buy it or not. It's definitely something that we can do to establish ourselves sort of as authorities in the fantasy genre and niche, and then of course just have fun.
Yeah, it's a little harder to tell. You can't use throw an affiliate link in there and see that the traffic went to the Amazon after being on your site, unless you use one of those like fantasyfiends.com/Joseph Lalo, and you get a 10% discount if you go through our site. All right, but what I think people are going to want to know more about is this relaunch that you did, and you've already told us some of the details. Can you talk about like kind of analyzing it now that you've seen it launch twice? Maybe what are some of the mistakes that happened the first time around, if you feel there were any, and what are the changes you made that helped to be more successful this time?
All right, so I'm calling it mistakes is probably unfair to the publishing house and their methods of advertising, because it was first published in 2015 when the book market was vastly different from where it is now. And so the publisher was operating much like a traditional publisher. They launch the book, they tell the readers there's this new book. I set up a Kindle countdown deal, had some freebie days, all of the old school methods. And it got some traction, it got some sales, it got a lot of people who fell in love with the character, and that sort of helped me build a following. But then it was a year from book 1 to book 2, and it was a year and a half from book 2 to book 3. So in the current marketplace, that amount of time between launches, that's the sort of thing that big 5 publishers can do because they've got this massive marketing budget and a lot of power behind them, but small indie presses can't afford to do that. So that's definitely one of the things that I learned in the last year or two, is that you've got to put out books faster. And so that definitely helped me structure my launch. Some people have mentioned doing it every week. Some people mentioned only do it once a month. I sort of met in the middle and did book 1 a week later, book 2 2 weeks later, book 3 3 weeks later, book 4, and then 28 days between 4, 5, and 6. I still haven't launched 4, 5, and 6. Book 4 comes out on the 10th of July. And the one thing that I definitely learned from that is that putting up a pre-order to the next book is a great way to get those people to strike while the iron's hot. Like the day that I set book 1 to go live, no pre-order for book 1, just a live release. The book 2 pre-order was up. I didn't include the link in the back of the book because I didn't have the link yet. It's sort of one of the problems with Amazon is you can't make the pre-order link available and copy it into the file. It's sort of tricky, but at least just having the book there and making sure that Amazon included it in the series page and all of that helped to get some great buy through. I think I got 55 pre-orders more or less of book 2 in that 1 week period. I got 200 pre-orders of book 3, all at full price for the 2 week period. And now I think I'm 2 weeks in and I'm at 170 pre-orders of book 4 at $4.99 full price. And that's with zero advertisement on any of those books. All of my advertisement has been focused on book 1 with the goal of keeping the rank nice and high and getting the sell-through through the consistency of the series and making sure that people find the stories interesting and want to keep reading.
It definitely makes sense to do a pre-order, especially when you're doing the rapid release. Like a 3-month pre-order, then you might start worrying about, am I going to have any ranking juice? Anybody willing to buy it right on the launch week? But when it's only a week apart, it makes a lot of sense. And I've actually put up book 2 first before as a pre-order for like 5 days so that I can get the link to put in the back of the book 1. And I put, as soon as I can, I put that up. I just don't tell anybody, because that's a little confusing if you're a reader, like, why is book 2 for pre-order and there's no book 1?
Yeah, that's smart. I do think for future series, I wouldn't go 1 week apart. I might do 3 weeks apart. But again, that same thing of having the book 1 with the pre-order for book 2, just so that you get that nice, sell through. The reader just finished the book. Okay, I love this story. What's next? Oh, look, book 2 is already available for pre-order. Get that. Maybe I wouldn't do it for more than a month between releases, but anything less than a month, 28 days or something, I would include the pre-order.
Yeah, I would too. And especially if, up to a month, I think is great, especially if your book 1 is selling really well at that particular moment in time. I would worry less about, it might mess up the ranking. I might not get as much ranking love on book 4 as the sure sale of like those people that are, okay, book 1's selling really well. And you never know, like 4 weeks from now, maybe it'll drop off and won't be selling as well. And you might have missed those people that would have gone right on and bought the next one if it was up there. I'm curious about the titles. I don't know if you picked the original title yourself or the publisher did, but you kind of had something we usually say, like, don't do that, like the made up fantasy word for the title, and I've done it. So I can't always say I'm the example, but it seems to be a little bit of a harder sell and maybe just harder for people to type in, like if they heard about the book. Did you do the original titles, and do you think the new ones are helping out?
Right. So the original title of the book was Blade of the Destroyer. That was an awesome title because it has 3 different meanings. It sort of conveys badassery, dark fantasy, all of that. The series title, The Last Bucellari was a hard word for people to get. So when I went to relaunch it, I was like, all right, we're going to try to sort of hit the lowest common denominator with the title, just make it as easy as possible for people to get, to understand what this story is about. So Dark Blade speaks of dark, it speaks of fantasy, it's got the violence to it. Of course, assassin as the end of that is just perfect. And of course, his magical dagger, which is very much a driving point of the whole series, really plays into that. So Dark Blade, assassin. And then consistent branding through all of the titles with Dark Blade, something Dark Blade Outcast, Dark Blade Protector, all of that really helps to make it pop when people are like, okay, so I liked this book, The Dark Blade, something Dark Blades. They Google it or they search it on Amazon and 6 books with the name Dark Blade come up. It makes it much easier for them to find it. Hero of Darkness, that was just a great title. It's very catchy. Hero is one of the super popular keywords on Amazon. Darkness is as well. Dark, Blade, and Assassin. The whole title of the first book and the series was basically to convey this darker fantasy story while hitting the keywords that are easy for people to find.
Yeah, they definitely, just at a glance, I'm kind of like, well, that hits on all the epic fantasy, every guy is gonna, and some girls too are gonna want to be like, oh yeah, assassins and blades, and we're gonna have lots of sword fights and stuff. It definitely sounds like I can see why it's been doing well just from the title, but you've also got some really awesome covers that would, I found the old ones, I think, from your paperbacks are still listed, and they're definitely going towards a different, more maybe dark horror, dark fantasy vibe. And did you just decide, you know what, I want those epic fantasy people, so I'm going to try to appeal to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Dark fantasy is a very, very niche genre because you'll have dark fantasy that touches on sort of the darker urban fantasy. It's got the darker paranormal, and then of course there's very few actual fantasy, epic fantasy novels that classify as dark fantasy. So that is too niche of a genre for what I was trying to hit. Epic fantasy is as big as it gets. So what I wanted to get all of the people from all this massive genre and get them in. And so the cover is actually probably one of the major selling points on there, because dark fantasy is going to be all dark covers. You'll have, black, you'll have dark blue, you'll have purple, you'll have red. And so the original cover was black, white, and red. And I loved it because it looked like a heavy metal album cover. And it was very unique, and it conveyed the vibe and the tone of the series perfectly. But with this new strategy of being as, all things to all men, as it were, I wanted something bright. I wanted something colorful. And sort of looking at urban fantasy covers, you see that there's these, sort of the darker backgrounds, and then there's these vivid images, these center ground things that stand out that really pop. And so I wanted that, but in a more epic fantasy way. So you've got that super bright blue background that immediately catches the attention of anyone's eyes that are going past it, whether it's scrolling through Amazon or looking through the sponsored products. And then as soon as you see that bright blue, you stop, and then you look a little bit closer, and you see this dude scowling, holding a sword. And one thing, some tiny little detail that I never knew but learned, is that for epic fantasy, you're going to have heroic looking characters, which are going to be light brunettes and blondes with light skin. And they'll be classically handsome, and they'll have, shining armor and all of that. For the darker, maybe grimdark, or the darker storylines, you're going to have people with black hair or dark colored hair, maybe scowling, less handsome. And so if you look closer at this guy who's on the cover, he's not your typical Caucasian, handsome Aryan guy. He is a darker, scowling guy, because that's exactly what conveys the darker tone of the story to the readers.
It sounds like, you put an awful lot of thought into the cover design and everything like that. Did you well, first off, who did your cover? Like, did you hire an artist, or did you put it together yourself?
Oh, I could not put together a cover, even if it demanded stick figures. Yeah, I hired Wicked Smart Designs. They worked with the publisher that did my Queen of Thieves series, and I loved their covers. If you look at the Thief of the Night Guild and Queen of the Night Guild, they're very vivid, very visually striking covers. And so that was what I wanted. And so I reached out to them and said, all right, I've got these 6 books, and I want the covers to be branded, visually the same or very similar, so that anybody who looks at it will say, oh yeah, that's a Darkblade novel, and colorful. And so what the artist did that was spectacular is she used the colors, rainbow colors, which everybody loves. It's very easy, a graphic thing that'll catch people's eyes. You've got blue for the first one, green for the second one, yellow for the third, white for the fourth, purple for the fifth, and red, because it's sort of that angry, violent climax. And they're all visually similar. They've got the same stock image, the same model on it. Everything is very on brand, but they're different, and the backgrounds are just striking. And so the more you zoom into the cover, the more detail you get and the more amazing it is. But at least with those bright, vivid colors in the background, and then that striking character in the foreground, you've got that eye-catching cover that hopefully is one-clickable.
Yeah, it's interesting to it's interesting to me that some people have no concept of what the heck their cover should be, and they just give a description of their book, like, here's what happens in my book, please give me a good cover. And if you're lucky, you get a cover designer who can do a spectacular job with that. It's interesting to see how well things can turn out when you're like, here are some key things that are required, because it gives them just enough structure to be able to, well, I know exactly how things would go if that's what you need. So I feel like it's an overlooked piece of advice to do a little bit of research, even if you're not doing your own cover, to be able to guide the cover designer.
Yeah, definitely. And look into covers that are popular in your specific niche. That's actually one of sort of the secrets that I would like to say contributed to the success of the series is that I looked on Amazon for assassin. Like I searched fantasy assassin and I scrolled through the first 4 or 5 pages of results and clicked on every book that had assassin or something similar, sell swords, mercenaries, sort of a grimmer tone to it. And then I reached out to all of those authors and said, would you be willing to swap? Would you be willing to feature my book in your newsletter on launch week? But focusing on those assassin or darker characters specifically, instead of going epic fantasy, just for the first week after launch, from May 29th, which was launch date, to July 5th, which was the launch of the second book. It was just these authors with assassins or sellswords or mercenaries pushing it for me. So that's locking in the also bots, not just with epic fantasy, but with that darker, more violent epic fantasy to hit those fans as much as possible.
It's interesting how it's come up a lot on this show, where you'd think that the key to being a really successful author is standing out from the crowd, but more and more it seems like the key to becoming a successful author is becoming a part of that crowd, but being a good part of that crowd. Like, you need to look like the product that you're trying to sell. And if you can look like a distinctive version of that product, good, but it's still got to look like the product.
Exactly. That's sort of my motto is, run with the pack, but be different and be ahead of them. Obviously, that's more something that happens in my head than in real life. But at least, with that goal of, okay, so fantasy fans want this anti-hero character to do this. Okay, so I'm going to do that. But then I'm also going to put my own unique spin on things. Fantasy readers expect this from their covers. Okay, I'm going to do that, but then I'm going to do a slight variation. So like I said, sort of reaching the lowest common denominator of all of the genre, and then finding a way to make your book stand out to be distinctive, like you said.
Yeah. Now here's a Jeff question. Cover designers can be pricey, so I was wondering if there was a limit to how much you wanted to spend on a relaunch cover.
Yes, zero, because I paid for these covers out of the original covers out of my own pocket because I liked them. I liked the art. I liked the vibe. And so I still stand by them as great pieces of art. The market's changed. Readers are looking for something different. So I've still got the images on my computer and I'll still share them from time to time. But having spent a bit of money on each of the covers, I didn't want to go super expensive with these relaunch covers. So thankfully I found this artist, Wicked Smart Design, who gave me a great rate, especially considering it was 6. And so with that, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to work with her for the next few years until I decide, I need to hire the same guy who does Brandon Sanderson or Scott Lynch's covers. That's when I'll change.
I'm curious, looking at the covers, I'll just ask a couple more questions about this. You're probably getting tired of it. But on first thought, I was like, those are illustrated covers, right? But it sounds like none of it is actually illustrated. How did they go about getting the same model? Is it Shutterstock stuff, or did you actually do a photo shoot?
No, yeah, they I think it's Deposit Photos or maybe Shutterstock, one of those two, where you buy a certain number of photos, or you pay $100 and you get 100 photos. So it's fairly cheap to get stock images. And she did a search and she found this one guy who was on the cover of the book originally, Traitor's Fate, which was released before the Hero of Darkness series. It was that guy as the character from the series. And so I was like, okay, can we find more images of this guy? So she searched, and 1 or 2 of the covers have the same face, like the same face, just, one of them is facing right and the other one is facing left. But the cover, the clothes and the pose and all of that changes. So readers, only very particular readers will be able to tell. But yeah, what I love about it is that they do look like they're awesome illustrations. And then once you click on it and you get closer, you realize, okay, it's stock photography, photo manipulation, but it's done so well, especially the backgrounds and the blending, that it looks awesome.
Yeah, the backgrounds too those are photographs, nothing illustrated.
I'm not sure. I think some of it might be 3D images, 3D art thrown up. Maybe I think she did some of it herself. Some of the details were definitely illustrated by hand, especially on, I know, book 3 has these 4 black stones in the background, and she painted those in by hand. And there's bandits in the background as well, and I think she did that as well.
Yeah, it's really a great combination, and it's encouraging, I think, probably for people listening to know you don't necessarily have to spend $1,000 on a custom illustration. Even, illustrations are typical in epic fantasy, but not everybody is doing them. And yeah, these look really great. I would take these covers in a second, and it probably helps if you knew I have 6 books, so I need to find a model we can do 6 different ways.
Exactly. And so that's one of the things that sort of comes back to the preparation, outlining the series. I didn't outline the whole series, but I knew how many I had when I was doing the relaunch. I knew I had 6. For my next series, I know for a fact that I have 5. And I know what characters are in the series, so I can tell her, okay, give me book 1 with this character, book 2 with that character, book 3. Like, I don't know if you've seen Phil Tucker's Chronicles of the Black Gate series, how they each have a different character. And those covers are visually striking. They're great. And so that's sort of what I want to emulate, of course, with the much brighter, bolder colors like I have on this series. And so knowing that I have 5, I can tell her, okay, I have 5. This is what I want, and she gets them all done. And there's never any question of, oh, will the cover be done on time, because I've got them done 6 months in advance.
Always nice to, unlike me, to be like scrambling at the last minute because I didn't even know I was going to write the book 2 months ago, and now I want to cover and publish it. Your path is much more enviable, more organized. I recommend people do that. And it helps when you get the rights back and you kind of get a second chance and you already know exactly what you have for the whole series.
Yeah, but also always, like, my way of working is, okay, I'm writing one book, but I've got another book in edits and another book with beta readers. So I've got 3 things going on. So I always know what's happening. So when I finish the one book that's in edits, I can start working on the next book in the series or thinking about what comes next. So sort of looking ahead, always be working on multiple projects, not actually working, but having multiple projects in the pipeline helps me stay on top of what comes next in terms of publishing. Like, some books turn out faster than others. This one that I'm writing now, it's been less than 2 weeks and I'm almost done with it. It's just one of these stories that comes out really fast. But I know that once I finish this one, I've got this 5-book series to start working on. I sort of have a tentative publishing date that I want to start, so I know when I need to have these projects done.
What did you decide to do as far as pricing? It looks like you've got the first one at 99 cents and then 2 and 3 at $3.99. And I think the newer one is coming out at $4.99. Did you play around based on previous experience or just kind of go for the middle of the road, what other authors are doing as far as pricing?
So for the book 1 pricing, I knew I wanted to launch at 99 cents. A few people counseled me against it because they say, devaluing your work and all of that. But I knew that to make the book work without a huge fan base to drive the sales, I need to get as many sales as I can and hopefully get those people to go. So when I launched the series, I launched it at 99 cents, fully intending to raise it to full price after the swaps and promos that I had set up petered off, which was, I think I set them up between May 29th and July 18th. So during that time, pretty much every day or every other day, I had 1 or 2 authors sharing my book in their newsletter. I had a Book Barbarian promo. I had various things. So during those 3 weeks, pretty much I always had something going on. But as I was getting towards July 18th and the time was coming to raise the price on book 1, it just didn't feel like it was the right choice, because I might be making more money on book 1 ultimately from the sales, because $3.99 you get 3 times, 10 times as much as you would with a 99-cent book, but then there would be far less sell-through. So that's one thing that I had never experienced before, because I've never had a long series like this. But like today, I just popped up my KDP thing today. Darkblade Assassin has sold 68 copies, all at 99 cents. It's been an awesome day for me, way better than anything I'd imagined. But those 68 copies, almost 60,000 Kindle page reads, but the book 2, Darkblade Outcast, at $3.99 has sold 28. So that's a 40% sell-through, essentially. Not great compared to a lot of authors. They want to get a 60-70% sell-through, but I figure 40% of 100 people is way better than 70% of 50 people. So ultimately it does sort of pay off, at least in my experience with this series. It has paid off to keep it at 99 cents, because you've got the people hooked on the first book and then they buy the rest of the series.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of the same logic goes through for people who aren't Kindle exclusive when they're wide. I mean, there is still some value to being perma-free. Like you're going to put more books out there at a lower or completely absent price than you would have otherwise. And if you've got a series to follow it up, then it can make its money back pretty quickly. I want to get a little bit back into like the sort of nuts and bolts of a relaunch here. You obviously had books out beforehand, and you had time to plan for the relaunch. How much time did you put any effort into sort of bulking up your fan base or your mailing list prior to the relaunch?
I did do some newsletter builders. I think I did an Amazon builder, to get followers on Amazon, which I just remembered that I had done it today. I think I ended up with about 7,000 new followers, people, clicked follow on my Amazon author page. That might have helped significantly or not, because Amazon doesn't really have a way to track those metrics. I don't know, but I think between the launch of my last book in March and this book, I didn't see a massive increase in my newsletter. I think if anything, it dropped because I sort of cleaned off the people who never clicked or opened anything. So right now it's about 7,500. It's stayed pretty consistent at that for the last 6 months or so, I would say. So I don't think I had much change in terms of my personal author platform. What did change was my understanding of Facebook and Amazon marketing. And that is where the huge difference was. When I launched the book 3 days early. I told everybody March 29th was launch date, and I hard and fast, March 29th, it's coming. March 25th at 11 o'clock at night, I clicked release. And so March 26th, bright and early on Sunday, it was up. And so I spent Sunday making a bunch of Facebook ads, and I think I set up about 60 or 70 Amazon ads, both sponsored product and product display ads. And I got a couple of Amazon ads that took off really nicely. It got, millions of impressions in the first couple of weeks. I was taking a sizable loss because the book was 99 cents, but it was, millions of impressions, thousands of clicks, hundreds of sales over that first week. Really helped. And I got very fortunate with my Facebook ads. I had been working with someone who's proven quite effective at Facebook ads, and the stuff that I've learned from him helped me to get my cost per click down to 10 cents for one ad and 17 cents on another ad. So I raised my ad spend to about $40 a day on each of those. And again, a huge loss. Not huge. We're not talking, thousands of dollars lost in the first week. But by the end of the first week, I think I had spent about $1,300 on Facebook ads, give or take, Facebook and Amazon. And I think I had made maybe 2/3 of that with the sales of book 1 and Kindle page reads. But then book 2 came out, and all those pre-orders kicked in, and all the buy-through came through. The hundreds of people who bought the book or read it on Kindle Unlimited kept going through. And so over time, the $1,300 of Facebook of money that I invested into the Facebook and Amazon ads was made up by, I think, day 8 or 9. And then by day 15, I was far in the green, I believe the expression is. And by I think 20 days into the launch, I had far exceeded my expectations. And it's still, I think I'm spending about $50 a day on Facebook ads, but I'm managing to keep that rank. Book 1 is ranked in the right around 1,000, and books 2 and 3 are in the 2,000 and 3,000s.
It certainly seems like it's working pretty well. Jeff has a question here with, like, where we talk about relaunch. Obviously, you did new cover, you did new blurbs, and you sort of developed your marketing mojo. Are there any other parts of a relaunch of a book that a relaunch touches, like any new editing or maybe updating the website or anything like that?
I definitely sent the book to an editor, and I said, look, I want you to just pick the crap out of this. If there's something bad, I want to fix it. And he sent it back to me, and I think I ended up changing 500 words. I added a little bit of a saucy sex scene to one part because he said it could go well there, and I added a couple of lines because the blurb that I'd written made it very much like it sort of changed the tone of the character a tiny bit, and the blurb was so catchy that I was like, screw it, I'm just going to change the character a little bit to make it fit the blurb. And so I added a couple of lines to sort of match that blurb. And other than that, it was almost nothing, because the book had, readers had really loved the character. They've connected with the character, who is it's half demon assassin with this dagger that drives him to kill. It's such an unusual character, but there's so many different characters like it that they love. You've got the Punisher, who's the revenge killer. You've got Spawn, who's sort of got that demonic thing. So it's unique enough to connect with readers, but it's similar enough to what they know and love. I've actually had people say, oh, that sounds like Spawn. I was like, thanks, I'll take that as a compliment.
I wanted to mention, when you were talking about your sell-through rate, that it may just be a little early for you. You may find that it goes up once the book's been out a while, like, because you're getting a lot of people probably picking up book 1 right now but haven't read it yet. So I actually find that, after you stop all the promos, and that, maybe books 2 and 3 have been out for a while and everything's been out for a while, that you may get a more honest, like, these are the people picking it up that genuinely found it and wanted book 1. And so you may even jump up to like 60-70% or more. So,
but even with like I said, with the 40% sell-through rate with the number of sales that I'm getting per day with these advertisements and with Amazon's algorithms, I'm happy to keep it at 99 cents, because it means more people are buying it and there's a higher chance of that sell-through. So if I get fewer people reading to book 2, that's okay, because ultimately more people are reading to book 2 than if I was selling 20 or 30 copies at $2.99.
Right, and it's the same with making the choice for the perma-free. You'll probably have even lower people buying through to the next one. But yeah, if you get a chance to maybe get 40,000 people to download it through a BookBub ad or something, why wouldn't you?
Exactly.
I am curious, we don't usually go into too much depth on the Facebook ads, since there's courses and stuff people can take if they want to become pros on that. But you mentioned having like a 10-cent per click, which is very good. I was just curious, are you using like copy you write plus the book cover, or are you using like independent stock photo art, or what kind of, I guess, how are you setting up your ads?
So yeah, I literally just kind of scrolled through the stock photos that they have on Facebook and tried to find the ones that came as close to my character as possible. It was really hard. I think I got like 3 images that applied for these initial ads. I ended up buying more from deposit photos for the latest batch of ads. But the way that I structured my copy was, started off with the tagline. The tagline of the story is really cool. It's the best assassin in the world doesn't come cheap. Betraying him will cost your soul. That's kind of a fun line right there. Anybody who likes that sort of action stuff is going to say, all right, I'm into it. And so then the next paragraph is getting into sort of how he's a badass. It's a scene. It's a couple of lines from early on in the book that sort of paints him as a badass as a character. And then the 4th line is his human side, the things that make readers want to connect with him on a human level, or what they would identify with as a character. And the last line is just a review that I pulled from Amazon or Goodreads. And just that combination of copy has turned out really well. People seem to like it a lot. It's gotten great clicks.
Cool. Thanks for sharing what's working there. So we'll go out and copy you now, of course.
Definitely. But you won't be able to do it as good.
Of course not. Actually, I'm not even going to deny that. My Facebook ads occasionally do okay, but I haven't invested enough time into really mastering it. I am wondering, you mentioned that your mailing list was relatively small, but that you approached other authors in your kind of assassin's niche. Did you I don't know, were you intimidated at all if you knew they had a big mailing list, or did you offer them anything? Like, because a lot of people are going to be in the same spot where their mailing list isn't very big, and maybe they feel a little scared to approach someone that they know is a big name author and might have a big list. Any tips or thoughts on that?
So there were two authors that kind of made me quake in my boots a bit. Brent Weeks of the Night Angel series. I wrote this character after reading the Night Angel and loving his older assassin character and not really loving the younger assassin character. So I wrote the series like, okay, I want to focus on this older guy. And so I reached out to him and I said, I wrote this character because of Night Angel. Would you be willing to consider it? I would be happy to share your next book to my readers. I kind of wrote this very nice stock email that I would customize to each of the authors that I reached out to and sent that to them. And of course, offering I'd be happy to help you with your next launch. I'd run a commercial for you on my podcast, even, bring you onto the podcast if you're interested. And I think I reached out to about 15 or 20 of them, and 10 or 12 said, sure, because they're all just normal people like me. They always say that about authors. They're just normal people like us. So it was very nice to get that, the responses, and people were like, yeah, sure, happy to.
All right. So one thing I want to I'm thinking about this is we have a lot of authors that follow us, and maybe they have a series. Maybe they're doing well with the current series, but they've got a series that they released previously they think could use a relaunch. Let's say that you're an author that has a following and you're relaunching something from way back when. Should any special thought be put into making your current fans aware this thing that's coming out, you may have already read it? Like, I realize it's a fairly specific problem to have, but it's one that could conceivably get you some bad faith.
Oh, definitely. When, like, the day that I got the news back from my publisher that I would have the rights back, I went and I did a live thing in my Facebook, a live video, and I said, "Listen, here's the deal. I sent the information out to my newsletter. I posted it on my blog. Like, I made sure that everybody knew what was happening because my books were just going to mysteriously disappear from Amazon." And a lot of people were like, "Oh, good. Do what's right for you." And so I don't know how many of my original fans actually picked up the relaunched series. I know some people, they love the signed paperbacks, so they're like, as soon as you've got them, send them to me, because the new covers are awesome, and the books are great to have. They're collector's items. But I made sure it was very clear to my readers, look, these books are identical to the originals in every way, or in every way except for these two scenes that I added. So if you pick them up, thank you so much. If not, I'm glad you read the original series. And a lot of them hadn't actually read the series originally because they came on to my platform via the Queen of Thieves series. So that was nice to get a lot of the people to get into this new series saying, hey, it's connected to this one. This character shows up in this book. Go read it.
All right, now so now now we know that there's a way to make sure that even when you've got a career in writing, you can still potentially relaunch an older series. How do you identify a series that can benefit from a relaunch versus a series that maybe ran its course and just won't find an audience?
That is an excellent question. I honestly could not tell you that. Going into this relaunch, I knew that this series had to change, mainly the covers and the blurbs and the titles and all of that, because that was kind of what was holding it back. If this series flopped, I wouldn't be able to tell you why it flopped. I put it through the editorial process. I looked at all the reviews on Goodreads and Amazon's, and people seemed to identify with it. There was just something that wasn't clicking. Now, how to identify a series that is just run its course? I think the only way to do that would be to look at what's really popular right now. Like if you go on to Amazon, or I'm in a lot of these different Facebook author groups, and so I know, 100 people are reviewing Michael Sullivan's new launch, or they're reviewing this one, The Poppy War, or they're really into the Wrecker's Gate. So you kind of see what people are liking, and of course doing your own Amazon research, seeing what books are not only high now but have been staying high for a while. You sort of get a feel for, okay, this vibe is popular, as it were. And so you can see, okay, mermaids in space, kind of died out in 2013, so I'm not going to try to relaunch this. Maybe I'm going to take the book back, unpublish it, and change it to Ghosts in Space or Witches in Space. So you can kind of see if there's a way to tailor an older series to the new, what's popular now. But beyond that, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Okay, I officially want to read Witches in Space now. Like, witch cozy mysteries that take place on a spaceship. Who's going to write that,
You'd
guys?
be surprised. There are so many space fantasy that are getting into witches now. Like witches in space, witchcraft and magic in space, like that is huge.
I've definitely seen the mages and the wizards out there, so I'll have to go looking for these witches because I haven't seen that yet. But just to kind of add on to what you guys were talking about, I think too, if it was your first series as an author and you've since found our podcast, or you've kind of learned a lot more from what's right, and maybe you can look at your old covers. I've certainly had this experience where like those covers were okay, but probably nobody went and jumped and bought the book based on seeing the covers. So if you learn a lot more on the marketing side or publishing side and think you can just do a lot better with it, I think that's a good time to invest a little bit and give it a try, especially if you got like 6 books, and they haven't already previously sold a lot. I think that's probably a sign that a relaunch is a good idea. All right, we're almost up to an hour, so I'm going to just ask one more question, I think. I noticed that you actually sell a guide on your website about how to find book review sites and like YouTube channels and things like that. Is that something you went out, did you seek out any new reviews for this series? And, how important for newer authors do you think it is to get the reviews like that?
So this ultimate guide, I was like you said, I was looking for reviews. So I was like, I'm done, Googling. So I basically spent a couple of weeks just looking for all of the, the lists, the directories of bloggers that review books. And I made sure that the ones that I included in this list were current. This was back last year. So I haven't touched it this year, unfortunately. I intend to, but we'll see. I do know that reviews are very important, but they're less important than they used to be. You see books that are in the top 2, 3, 400, and they've got 5 reviews or 6 reviews. But because of their cover, because they're great blurb, because of their look inside, they just sell. You've got books that have thousands of reviews. They're not doing anything because they're lacking that. So I will say that having good reviews is important because readers are going to look at that. But bad reviews are far less doom worthy than they used to be. Like Darkblade Assassins picked up some 2 and 1 star reviews out of 36. Blade of the Destroyer had 150 plus or something like that. And I'm not worried about it because those, the reviews, they're just telling what other people thought. And the fact that random people have left those reviews instead of my existing fans or my ARC team, it means I'm getting people to buy and read it, and I'm happy about that.
It may be with Kindle Unlimited too, when you're in that and you are in that with your books. I guess we should mention that they have nothing to lose by trying the book, even if would normally be $4. It's basically free to them with their subscription. So that may be why, it's less important. It may actually, it'd be interesting to know if it helps more for people who are publishing wide and are hoping to have more ways for people to, here's the book on Kobo, here's the book on Barnes & Noble. Because there are still some review sites out there that really get a lot of traffic. It is kind of hard to find those, but there are some that have been going for years and years. I know like Fantasy has the Fantasy Book Critic, and
Fantasy Faction.
Yeah,
a few of the book
your podcast perhaps.
Oh yes.
And also, if there's any romance in your sci-fi or your fantasy, is it Smart Trashy Books, Smart Bitches, or maybe vice versa. That one has a huge presence on the internet, so it can be worth it. But yeah, it's probably one of those things, especially if you're going into KU, you might not need so much right now if you do have the great cover and kind of you're hitting the assassins or whatever is popular in the particular subgenre of fantasy you're working on.
Yeah, it's tough to like those older school methods of advertising and launching, like book tours, blog tours, sorry, release parties, things like that. their effectiveness is getting less and less limited as there's more competition and Facebook, really cracks down on, or it's taking more and more control over what's visible, from Facebook pages, or how effective the groups are, or with the GDPR regulations. So, you just kind of got to be prepared to spend money on advertising right to make it work. That's what I have learned, let's say. That's what I was prepared to do with this launch, and it's the launch has just reinforced that belief even more.
Now, I got one more question about the review thing. As with anything that's targeted at authors, it seems like a site that does reviews, or sites that provide reviews, could potentially be really scammy and awful. Like, did you encounter any that you were like, this isn't going on my list because this is a scam? And like, how do you spot something like that? Like, this will be of no value to me?
Well, a review that people expect you to pay for, that's just a red flag right there. When they say, I'm happy to review your book, it'll cost you $25 and I'll post it on, most people will say, no, thank you. Honestly, the rest of the time, a review's a review's a review. If they're going to post it to Goodreads, if they're going to post it to Facebook, I'm happy to send them a copy of my book. If they seem a little bit fishy, as long as it's very clear that I am not paying them to give a good review, or, but again, I have not submitted the book to any review sites. I haven't done review sites in a couple of years because those no longer seem as effective as they once were. Right now, the best way to get reviews is just to ask your fans to do it. Send it to an ARC team, and in your newsletter say, hey, please post a review. In your Facebook group, hey, consider posting a review. That seems to be the best way to do it.
I thought you were going to start that sentence and say the best way to get reviews is just to sell a lot of books, which is actually true.
Definitely.
Maybe not always the easiest thing to do for everyone, but they do come naturally. It's, if you sell enough.
Yeah, exactly. Although, that's the secret to success as an author and getting your name recognized. Basically just sell a ton of books. That's kind of how it works.
Everybody forget all the marketing, just go out and sell a lot of books. It'll all work out. All right. Well, we've done about an hour, and thank you for being on with us tonight, Andy. Do you have any parting advice or any tips you want to share before we head out?
Wow, here's the part where I'm supposed to say something intelligent.
Yeah.
I would just
read a
go
fortune
back to,
cookie.
I know, right? I would just go back to preparation. Like I said, I know my next book is a 5-book series, and I haven't even started working on it yet, but I've got a tentative publishing date in mind, and I'm going to have at least 3 of those 5 books written, so I can sort of repeat this process of a prepared launch with the pre-orders and stuff without all the stress of, oh my God, am I going to finish at the last minute? So just having things prepared in advance. I know there's a lot of pantsers out there who will just be like, nah, screw that. And, that's totally cool too. But for people who want to sort of take it to the next level, it does require a good deal of preparation. Even if you're not preparing, the story you're going to tell down to the nitty gritty, just knowing, okay, this is what I want to do next, or this is what I've got going on in the future, so I can start taking steps towards it now. Like, right now, I don't have a book launching until October or November, but I've already started setting up swaps with fantasy authors so that I know when the time comes, I've got 40 or 50 people that I can reach out to and say, hey, I shared your book in my newsletter this day. Will you share mine like that? So just looking ahead, always knowing what's to come.
Excellent advice. And for anybody just listening or watching, I would definitely recommend going to Amazon and looking at Andy's book series. This is Hero of Darkness, and to see what he's done with the covers and the blurbs too. But I think the covers, you talked about how methodical you were, and they really look good, and they definitely look cohesive and part of a, a series and a brand, as we are all supposed to do. And maybe you want to buy one of Andy's books while you're over there. I'm sure he would appreciate that. And just let us know where people can find you online, and what the new release is, or the name of book 1, if you want to remind us.
Yeah, so I am everywhere under my name, Andy Peloquin. My website's andypeloquin.com. I'm on Amazon as Andy Peloquin, Facebook, Andy Peloquin, everything, Twitter, all of that. You can find me also at the Fantasy Fiends podcast. We're on YouTube and Podbean, and I believe iTunes as well. It's a fun weekly podcast. What were you asking about the new release?
if you want to plug it, or maybe book one, whatever you want people to check out.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So the Hero of Darkness series, there's 3 books published with 3 more on the way before the middle of September. So it's going to be done nice and soon. It's a badass assassin, half demon, immortal, with this dagger that drives him to kill, pisses off the wrong people. They end up killing people who are close to him. He goes on a full-on vengeance spree, very Punisher-esque. Sort of Dexter meets the Punisher with a little bit of Night Angel thrown in. Awesome sword and sorcery fantasy, tons of fun.
All right, very cool. And thank you so much for answering all our questions today. Hopefully everybody else that relaunches their series will do just as well. And this is episode 188, guys. So if you need the show notes, or I'll put up the links to Andy's podcast and website and books. So you can come on by marketingsff.com if you want to snag those links. Thanks, Andy, and thanks for listening, everyone.
So, everybody.